Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I want to cover the latest news, including what is happening with the Manchester United sale as the first prospective buyer goes public, and it is the one we were mostly expecting. Talk about Jadon Sancho, as it has now been confirmed, our exclusive information from earlier this week, that he would be returning to full team training with the squad this week. Talk about Garnacho's contract. Talk about the goalkeeper situation as the news comes out there, and a little bit more, including the finances of Manchester United and what is really needed from an owner. Have a discussion about this. There's going to be a lot of debate, and it is worth just talking about. So let's get right into it. So first and foremost, Sir Jim Ratcliffe becomes the first up in the purchase of Manchester United. Him and Ineos were the information we got way back before everything was public in August and September about potentially looking at Manchester United as a purchase. It's been a very funny thing because we got that information. Then he went on that forum and said, well, he talked with the Glazers, but it didn't progress beyond there because United wasn't for sale, which isn't really true. And I think a lot of people wrote him off and wrote off the sale of the club at the time. And that was just not the case. And then, of course, Glazers went public, and very quickly it came out that he was intending to bid. Now, what has come out now officially is that he had direct talks with Rain Group and the parties involved just hours before, serious talks, just hours before putting out a public statement from Ineos with an intention to bid for Manchester United. And that's really good news. We've been waiting now for the intentions of bidders to go public, as we know that there are people out there who are going to be bidding. We know there's a lot of interest in it, and Ratcliffe is the first. He's wanted to be kind of the front of the queue on this one, and it appears to be in conjunction with Ineos. Now, that is a good thing because there was concerns as to whether Ineos would want to get involved in this. They have a lot more resources if it's him and Ineos together, obviously, than him on his own in terms of purchasing the club. There's no conflict of interest at the moment with NICE in terms of UEFA because NICE are not in UEFA competitions. If they were to become and get into UEFA competitions, it would propose a challenge, but there's going to be at least 18 months until that happens, in which case there's a lot of different things that they could do, including just divesting interest in selling the club in France, if he prefers to make Manchester United kind of the main focus and the flagship. So the question is, of course, why did he go first? Why did he go public? And is he likely to get the actual purchase? Now, I've heard since the beginning that he was interested. However, just from a lot of what I've heard, I'm not 100% sure that I would say Sir Jim Ratcliffe would be a favorite at the moment. I'm not sure that I would say he has the highest likelihood or anything like that, even though he's first in line at the moment publicly, because he is going to be rather price conscious. He is going to want to make sure he gets the best deal. And that's true of most parties, actually, including anybody talking about Middle East. They're not actually tending to be people who just throw money around like crazy over the top. I don't think anyone is going to pay way over budget on this. But if it starts getting bidded up, I think Ratcliffe may be one who does not follow the trend upwards based on prior comments. However, there's a lot of questions. Would he be a good owner? Would he not? How would it work? It is really hard to say any of that as it pertains to how they plan to run Manchester United. Manchester United is different than NICE. It's different in terms of attracting top talent. It's different in terms of everything. It's hard to very much manage how one would run versus the other in terms of ownership. Impossible to make predictions based on that. Likely what Sir Jim Ratcliffe is doing by going public is pushing forward and trying to get other bidders to put their names out now so you can start to get a measure of what you're up against. And that is likely what's going to happen here. Get some people on side, especially as a British local, a Manchester lad, that he would like to get people to back him on his side, give him some support in the purchase. And sometimes by going public and getting that support, you can even push other potential buyers out and thin the crowd and make the process easier in terms of an auction, a negotiation, and a sale, and all of that. So that's what Sir Jim Ratcliffe is doing. He's first off the blocks. Overall, the sales process is going pretty much exactly as expected. I said during the World Cup we'd expect to hear more news. In January, we'd start to hear about people moving forward. The whole process is, this has all been confirmed now, we're talking about those due diligences about opening the books. Well, our information was there was at least 2 parties who had already signed on to do that as of about last week. And what's been confirmed now in these reports that have come out about Ratcliffe is the news has explained a bit the process better, which I think is really good. They sign on to intend to be a bid. That doesn't necessarily mean it's public. And then they're able to view Manchester United's confidential financial records and do the due diligence on the club, and the other way around. That's in the process. That's what Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos are going to be doing now. That's what I believe a couple other private parties are doing. And then the formalizing the bidding process and actually putting a bid in will likely occur around the beginning of February for most parties that are involved. But they'll have a general gist in order to make that intent, in order to sign on and get it into the books. They'll likely have to make some sort of intent or a general idea of, we'd be willing to pay around this amount. Now we want to get into it. So that's likely where things are at as of now. That's where things are moving at the moment. The process doesn't have to take that much time. To me, it's going right on track for what they said with quarter one. You have a viable buyer on the table, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And I want people to understand something now on this. Really look at it for a minute. United is for sale, and there's a viable buyer on the table who is willing to pay, likely somewhere in the range of £5 billion pounds for the club. The likelihood that the Glazers are no longer in charge come summer, just with Jim Ratcliffe involved publicly, even though there's others, is at an all-time high. It's more likely now that the Glazers are gone by this summer. Just let that sink in for a minute. You have a viable buyer. It's for sale. They could just sell it to him if nobody else came in. They would still sell the club to Sir Jim Ratcliffe for $5 billion or so. So the likelihood of the Glazers leaving is at an all-time high. Don't get that twisted. Now, in terms of the best owner for Manchester United, what type of owner is best? What do they need to do? Obviously, it's impossible to say when it comes into the minutia, but there's a couple things that we know. There's a lot of really, really good football people at Manchester United right now, and there's a lot of people who have good sources around the club that would agree with that. There's a lot of very, very smart people. Obviously, Eric Ten Hag and all his staff, but there's a lot of good people. Dominic Jordan, the whole recruitment they've been doing, the people they've been hiring in all sorts of different areas, they're very, very good people at Manchester United. What's wrong with the Glazers, and what makes them bad owners? People will say it's the finances, and that's part of it, but I disagree. From looking behind the curtain a little bit, and things that I've passed along, the number one thing wrong with Manchester United under the Glazers is the involvement of Joel Glazer in the day-to-day running of the club. Period. That's it. That is the number one thing wrong. It's the reason that so much money has been wasted. It's the reason that signings have often been bad. It's the reason that recruitment has been poor. It's the reason that managers have been in this carousel like crazy. The more involvement the owner has who is not the expert, the worse off a club is going to be. And this is not exclusive to clubs who are owned by Americans or anything. The more involvement an owner has, the worse it is. Even Chelsea, for the amount of money that Roman Abramovich dumped into there, yes, they won titles here and there. It's always chaos. It's always been chaos at Chelsea. They'll go poorly for 3 seasons and then just randomly win the league. And that's fine. One could claim that's a measure of huge success. It's not. Look at what they've done. Look at how much money they spent for Lampard and how terribly that went. And they backed Tuchel and then they did this and that. And obviously it's a new owner now. But manager carousel, crazy, instability. It's not what you'd want from a club. It required constantly dumping money in and didn't bring a measure of success. Whereas, of course, you do have Manchester City that's extremely well run. The involvement of the owner is nothing. They set up the right parties in place with Cheeky and all of that. And it works, and it's a great setup. The more involvement, in Barcelona, the way that the voting works, the way that the presidents are voted in, ends up having the club run pretty terribly. There's so many different ways to view it, but the fact of the matter is that the biggest reason for the problematic ownership of the Glazers is, number one, the involvement of Joel Glazer in the club. And then number two is that the debt on the club that the club is ridden with since their purchase vastly minimizes their spending power every year and reduces how much they can spend even off the back of their own revenue. Those are the two things for me in the biggest order. So number one, I would say the biggest qualification to me as an owner personally, my opinion, is that they don't get involved. I don't want them to be involved. They can do as much as they want commercially, sponsorship, all of that, the business side of it, building United as a brand and getting it to the top. That's all things business people can understand. Stay out of the football department, give them a budget, and let them work. And that would be number one for me in terms of what makes a good owner. Number one. Number two, and that means appointing smart people too. I think that is very important because it does come from the top. When you're appointing that CEO and appointing the directors, it does have to go for the top. They have to be smart and intelligent in appointing good football people. But there's a lot of them at Manchester United right now. So that would be number one. Number two, finances. And there's a lot of argument about this. There's a lot of people who tell you that because United don't have the money right now, they cannot afford to run themselves, they can't afford to do things the way that you want them to. They can't afford to... Sorry, just a minute. I got a message here about today's game. Very interesting. Interesting stuff. It's going to be an interesting lineup. I'll tell you that much. I don't want to put it out. It's way too early. But it's going to be an interesting game. Interesting lineup. Very kind of exciting. Anyway, sorry, got distracted there. In terms of the finances, some people tell you that United, because they don't have money, it's evidence that you need tons of money being dumped into the club. So I want to back this up and just speak with this logically when you look into it, because United's finances are very transparent. The revenues of Manchester United have supported and do support spending in the range of 150 to 200 million on transfers every single year. They do. They support that. That's without selling, like the club have not been able to do the last 10 years, selling well or selling on time because of decisions by Joel Glazer. If you were able to sell earlier, like Pogba, when he wanted to go, people like that, it would have made a big difference. When you look at the finances for the last couple of years and why the club right now doesn't have the finances, there's two things that stand out. Number one, it's something like 80 million in finance costs for the debt. And number two is Ronaldo, which was, again, an owner interference type signing that cost the club 50, 60 million over the last 18 months. You remove those two things, Manchester United is profitable. Profitable while spending however much it spent last summer, which was 225, 250 million on transfers. Manchester United is a profit machine. Manchester United is a revenue machine. And that's with, let me just add to that a few more things. It's a toxic situation where the merchandising of Manchester United is practically unpalatable to people. Nobody wants to promote the Glazers. I don't want to. I have a partnership affiliation set up where I can sell Manchester United stuff. I don't want to promote it because nobody wants, you shilling the Glazers and giving money to the Glazers and all that. It's an understandable criticism. Nobody wants to promote Manchester United gear and merchandise right now because of the relationship with the owners. And selling more of that, promoting that more is going to be better for sponsorships, better for revenues, better for all of it. Not having a toxic relationship with the owners, the fans, and the people around the world is going to vastly improve the prospects for revenue. So you can see healthy revenue growth with new owners regardless of who they are, due to sponsorships, partnerships, things like that, that'll be easier to obtain. You're going to see, biggest thing to me is they don't get involved. And then number two is the biggest thing is they wipe the debt. They have to do that. That I agree with. I don't think you need to dump a bunch of money into the club, but you do need to wipe the debt when you buy it. The debt needs to be gone because you cannot be servicing 50, 80 million a year in debt. It's $1 billion that's been spent on the Glazer debt. Well, you take that $1 billion, that's the stadium. So we've been able to have essentially nearly the highest transfer spend plus a new stadium off the backs of the revenue of the club with no investment, none at all. Take out the dividends, take out the debt payments, and take out all the poor decision making. Manchester United would be the best run, most successful club in England without further money dumped into it. And that is the truth of it. That is the truth of it. The books are available to you yourself. Even with all the money spent last year, without the Ronaldo mistakes, and without the debt, without the debt repayment, the club would be very, very self-sufficient and able to support hundreds of millions in transfer spend per year. Add to that, again, increased revenues from improvements to sponsorships and things like that. And you're looking at a real powerhouse financially. And that's how United should be. And I think there's an advantage to that. Because if you can build it that way, you have security for the future. If someone can come in and build United as a financial powerhouse on its own back, no matter who owns the club, it's always going to make it. And it's always going to be what you want it to be. All the other questions about sports washing this aside, I think that's valuable. That the club is capable of building a massive revenue, similar to how Real Madrid is right now. That is the most powerful financial club in the world off its own back. And United can be that way because of the fan base. It can be that way because it has so much support from everybody around the world. It can be that, and it should be. Instead of falling aside, the reason Man City can't do it is because they have no fans, right? They can't. They need the money dumped in. Newcastle's fan base doesn't touch Manchester United's. Manchester United has a huge, massive fan base, and the club should be taking advantage of that. I'm not saying taking advantage of the fans, but taking advantage of the fan base to get the sponsorships, to get the revenues, to build a financial powerhouse like nobody's ever seen, and that will happen with on-the-pitch success. And that's part of the plus to it. Is if you need the on-the-pitch success to have success financially in the club, there's more motivation to get it right than just trying to throw money at it, and who knows if you get it right. PSG have never won a Champions League by dumping money in it. Chelsea, as we've talked about, have been up and down and crazy and all over the place. Barcelona, they haven't had money dumped into it, but with all their levers and things, it's not that much different. It's really about running the club right. So to me, the best owner is, number one, they don't get that involved. Number two, they clear the debt. And number three, they focus on making Manchester United a powerhouse that is self-sufficient. That is the biggest powerhouse in England and probably in the world in terms of a football club. That's my opinion. On to Goalkeeper. Some news came out today that Manchester United are interested in David Raya. And this is true. I believe that there's the four goalkeepers that we talk about. There's Unai Simon, Diogo Costa, David Raya, and Hugo Sanchez. Maybe Hugo Sanchez, is that the right first name? I don't know. Sanchez. Those are the four goalkeepers who kind of fit the modern profile that are looking to be on the move soon. And one of the things I've been very certain of being true is that while they're offering David De Gea a lower wage on contract with the goalkeeper, while Manchester United are offering David De Gea a lower wage to stay for the long run, they are also looking at a number one goalkeeper replacement, either somebody to compete with David De Gea over the next year or two or replace him outright and just rotate, but somebody for the long haul. And I think the four most viable names are, and cost is going to factor into this, are Diogo Costa, Simon, Raya, and Sanchez, and it's going to depend based on cost, availability, competition, all of that, what they spend at striker, which is a bigger priority, what is left for the goalkeeper, but it is a priority, and those are the four names I'll keep an eye on. Diogo Costa being the most expensive, but also the best one and the one that they would prefer the most. So I strongly believe they will make a move for one of those per my information. And I think any of those names are a valid link and should be accepted as a valid link, in addition to David De Gea taking a lower wage, with Tom Heaton leaving, with Dean Henderson likely to be sold. So that is the situation there. Jadon Sancho, the exclusive information we put out on Monday, has returned to full team training. He's back. He's with the team. He's likely to start being involved very soon, and we need him. This is extremely exciting. I am very ready for Jadon Sancho to be back, and I hope he sees the same kind of revival that a lot of the other players are seeing under Ten Hag, and I think he will. Do not forget, this is one of the most talented young players in the world who is breaking absolute records, putting messy numbers up at the age of 20, and that's a resource we haven't had with all this winning. And where we need most is scoring goals and assisting and creating chances, and I think he can provide that. So it's very exciting. Last thing on this before I go, not on Sancho, but with regards to forwards, I believe that Alejandro Garnacho, I don't believe it's done, but from what I've been told, we should expect that Garnacho is signing his new contract, and it's not an issue. It's good. From what I've been told, I don't know the details of it, but it's going to get done. It's going to get done. Nothing to worry about there. Okay, so looking forward to Palace today. I think we're going to put out a strong lineup. Let me just say that. I think it's going to be a strong lineup. I think people are going to be excited about it. Okay, thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I will see you in the next one, definitely with more updates soon on the sale process and everything moving forward as things are getting very exciting at Manchester United. Talk to you later.